Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is Victor again with my Ioniq 5. Today's video is about seat comfort with my Ioniq 5. And if you're like me, comfort's actually super important. In fact, as I've gotten older, it's slowly risen kind of to the top of my list when I'm car shopping. So that kind of explains why I was previously in a Volvo XC60 and also why we still have a Volvo XC90. Volvo's built a reputation of making some of the most comfortable car seats in the industry, and personally, I can vouch for that. I think they make fantastic seats. But for me, with the Ioniq 5, and just like most test drives, you only get about 10 to 15 minutes with it. And then after that, I just had to read up on forums and watch reviews and see what people had to say about the seats, which in general is not much. Nothing really bad to hear about the seats, so at that point, well, I took the plunge, I bought the car, and kind of hoped for the best. And that brings me to why I actually waited so long to cover seat comfort in my channel. And that's because personally for me, I think it actually takes some time. You know, a seat can feel great initially, but what about after a couple days or a couple weeks, or in this case, 2 months? So at this point, we've got about 2,500 miles on the car. We're at over 2 months of ownership. And I've had quite a few 3-4 hour drives in it. So I think at this point I've got a pretty good idea of what it's got to offer. So first off, I think I should go over a little bit about what my seat time looks like and a little bit about myself to give you a better idea of if this is a good seat for you. So my typical daily seat time is about 2 hours in the car, usually broken into 30 or 40 minute chunks. I'm basically driving to a job site, I get out, and then I drive to the next job site, and I kind of repeat it a few times until I finally go home. And then every few days, I'll stop by my local EA station and sit there and charge for half an hour. So my typical seat time is 2 hours, but certain days it'll actually get up to about 3 hours in the car. Now, my actual drive is 99% in the city of Philadelphia. That means mostly stoplights, mostly stop signs, a little bit of freeway thrown in there, but if I'm on the freeway, I'm essentially sitting in traffic. So I'm always using my feet. I'm not really just sitting back using HDA2. Now, a little bit about myself. Since high school, I've been diagnosed with herniated discs, and I have them between L4 and 5, and also T7 and T8. And I also have nerve damage going down my legs. So it's been that way for over 20 years. You know, they do flare up from time to time, whether it's weather related or if it's sports activity related, or even just sitting in a really bad chair. For example, airplane seats are the worst for me. On those newer planes, it's essentially just an aluminum frame that they wrapped with a little bit of leather, and that's essentially me sitting on a metal chair for, I guess, 5 or 6 hours. Or if it's an old, worn-out plane, then those seats are kind of hollow feeling. There's not really any more foam left in there, so it just feels like I'm being suspended in a camping chair. So that's kind of what it looks like for me. I'm also a relatively small guy. I'm about 5'5", and pretty slim frame. So hopefully that gives you a better idea of where I'm coming from. So what are my actual thoughts on the Ioniq 5 seats? Well, I've found the Ioniq 5's driver's seat to be actually a really good place to spend time. It's not perfect, but even then I consider it a win, because overall I can walk away from that car every day without noticing extra pain in my back from the seats. It's a very wide and a very flat seat, not much bolstering, but it seems like it would actually accommodate much taller and much wider people easily. And I've seen that to be the case. Plenty of owners and reviewers comment that they're over 6 feet tall and fit comfortably in front and in back. So far, I've only had one viewer comment that he didn't fit, and that was because he was 6'8", and he ended up buying an ID4. So if you're on the really tall side, maybe the ID4 actually makes more sense. But back to the seat. The seat base cushion is relatively long, but it still works for me. However, if it were any longer, I think I would actually find it uncomfortable. So I don't think it's going to be ideal for anyone with shorter thighs, unless you add a back cushion, in which case that would kind of push your frame further up the seat base, and then you might not have any issues there. Now, if I ended the review there, I think that wouldn't really provide enough information or enough context to tell you or even tell myself whether this is the right seat or if it's going to be a good seat for me. So that's why I've compiled a spreadsheet here of all the most recent cars that I've been in or spent some time in, and kind of highlighting the differences, highlighting the things I like and I dislike. And who knows, maybe you've spent time in these cars or you have access to some of these cars and you can give it a try and kind of compare it to my notes and see what you think. If you have similar thoughts, then you may feel the same way about the Ioniq 5 seats as I do. So let's take a look. So looking at the list, I essentially have it rated from best to worst, top to bottom, and we'll focus first on the base seat cushion, which is just the cushion that you're sitting on. And you'll see the Volvos take top number 1 and number 2. Their seat base cushions feel very firm. It's a pretty hard feel initially, but it feels really dense. It feels very full, like someone just stuffed them super, super full of foam. The Ioniq 5 has that similar firm initial feeling, but you don't quite get that firm, dense, really full feeling. It kind of feels like it's firm, but not quite as much foam in there. And you'll see moving down the list, there's a couple other cars that I feel like had a similar firmness, like the Model 3. And same thing, they felt good initially, but kind of felt like it was lacking some foam, but overall not bad. Then you'll see I have the CRVs listed as a little too soft for me, and then you'll see metal chair-like, and that goes for those 3 cars, the Golf R, which I was surprised, I didn't expect it to be out like that, and then the Jaguar and the Lexus, same thing. And I sat in there initially and thought, oh, it's not bad, since they have some leather and a little bit of padding in there, but after an hour or two, when I got up, I mean, I felt it. Things were bad. And lastly, at the very, very bottom, we have the Mini Cooper and the Chevy Equinox, where they have that hollow feeling that I described earlier with the airplane seat, where it feels like you're just sitting on a suspended canvas, I guess, or like a camping chair where there's nothing underneath you. There's no foam supporting you. It's just, you're just hanging there. And moving on, I have some extra notes for specific seat cushions. Like I said, with the Volvos, they're close to perfect. The Ioniq 5, I felt pretty good up to about 2 hours, and then once I start hitting that 3-hour mark, I would notice that I was trying to move around and shift positions. Again, I think it just comes down to it doesn't quite have enough foam or it's not dense enough. But overall, at 2 hours, I still felt good. With the Model 3, honestly, I just don't remember that well. I remember the firmness, but I don't remember that much more than that. And the other ones that stand out, really, like I said, with the camping chair, that hollow feeling, or with the metal chair-like feeling, where there's just not much there besides the actual seat frame. And then we move on to the backrest portion, which is the part where you're leaning on. The XE60 I felt like was actually perfect. And that might be because it was the R design model. R design models typically have suede or Alcantara kind of lining that middle section. So what it's doing is it's actually holding me in place, preventing me from even sliding downwards or slouching. It's holding me up. And so in that sense, it's perfect. I actually tried the XC90 T6 with R design seats, and I thought that was the perfect car for us. We ended up getting the Inscription because it had ventilated seats, which I wanted, but I think the newest generation XC90 with the R design seats might be the best seat I've ever sat in. Now, this is kind of where the Ioniq 5 lets me down. I rate it as having poor lumbar support. I can also feel the middle seam when the lumbar support is inflated, and also it seems to deflate itself. Now, with my Volvos, I don't really notice it that much, but with the Ioniq 5, you can tell it's an airbag in there, and you can tell when it's inflated and when it's not, and you can really feel that middle seam. I'm not sure why, so at this point, I've just kind of left it deflated as much as possible, basically not really using the lumbar support. But still, like I said, I can still make it about 2 hours through without really noticing anything, but once I get beyond that, then it starts feeling a little uncomfortable. And with the rest of the cars, you can see the rest of my notes there. The one that really stood out to me, which is funny, was the 2021 Chevy Equinox. So that was actually the rental car that I had to take up to New York to buy the Ioniq 5. And man, that thing was surprisingly strange. They had super aggressive side bolsters, and the side bolsters not only were out very far, but they also pinched you a lot on the sides. Like I said, I'm only 5'5", I'm a pretty small guy, but sitting in the driver's seat, I felt like I was being pinched on both sides for that 3-hour drive going up. So, not really sure what's going on there. I'm curious if anyone else has had any seat time there. And again, I have an extra notes section. Like I said, the XC90 with the R design seats were probably the best seats that I've sat in. You also see where some of these cars were just rentals, so I actually didn't really have that much time in them. The Golf R, like I said, I was surprised by how stiff those seats were, but I was only in there for about an hour. And then with the Jaguar and the Lexus, after driving for a whole day, I was in a lot of pain the next day for both of those cars. So in summary, overall, I think they're pretty good seats. For me to be able to say, as a person with back issues, that I can sit in them for 2 to 3 hours and walk away saying, oh, that wasn't bad, that's a win for me. So if you like firm seats, great. If you like soft and plush seats, these may not fit that so much. So, if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up in the comments below. I'll try my best to answer them. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Please subscribe. See you on the next one.